So this is the Practical Classics Riley Pathfinder seat. This is the upper part that we've just prepped in the last video of the back seat, and it obviously has this tear repair which we said we were going to fix, and we have the scuffing here which we're going to look at fixing as well. But first of all, I think the area to be fixed is to get this tear glued down. We've pre-cut our backing fabric to go in there underneath, which we're going to put in. Obviously we've got the rounded corners on there, because what we don't want is like a pointed corner on it, so that when you feed your fabric in, it buckles up. So with it having the rounded corners, it's much easier to get that flat, so that's obviously perfect. So first sort of process that we need to do with doing any tear repair is to get your backing fabric cut and then place that inside the actual item itself. Now you can do this in one of two ways. You can see that roughly that's where it's going to want to be, so you can hold that in position. You can put a couple of pins in place through the fabric, so that way you're not going to lose the positioning of where your actual fabric is, and it'll keep it in nicely in position so that you don't lose it inside the seat as well, and that'll give you an opportunity to get that fed in. You can do that with a spatula or by hand if you wanted to. I mean, sometimes obviously depending on the holes you've got to do that by spatula, so you've got to get that fed in and keep that nice and flat as that feeds in. And that's the key to doing this, is with any tear repairs, the key to it is to keep the fabric actually flat. You can take that one particular pin out. Now we've got that one in there, but we've still got the one pin in position, which we can see here. This particular pin is in position, so that's absolutely fine. We just need to make sure that we get this nice and flat all the way around so that we can do our tear repair. Depending on what you're sort of repairing, you can sometimes, this is a poly cotton that we've used here, so it's not going to stretch. So when obviously this gets pushed against, or your back is against the seat, because this is the upper part, you're not going to cause any stress to here for this to open up again. And to be fair, the glue is extremely strong, and I cannot see that reopening unless somebody really does do some serious hard pressing, which you're not going to do on the back of the seat anyway. So this is our own LRC water-based leather glue. So we're going to get some of that put in there, use a generous amount. You can then use a little bit to sort of go between the lines as well when you're finishing off. So at the moment I'm going to keep the pin in position, and we're going to get the glue literally underneath. I think my top is just wants a toothpick in it. Top just wants the toothpick to run through because it's just blocked up slightly, to remove the old glue, a little bit of glue there that's dried up in the lid itself. So just get your toothpick and push that old glue through, which you can see there, a bit of the old glue, just stopping the new glue from coming out. So again, we'll get the glue in there, hold the flap down, get the glue squeezed in on the leather or on the fabric, it doesn't really particularly matter, as long as you get plenty of glue under there. If you get any on the outside, don't worry about that. You can just wipe that off. With it being a water-based glue, it's going to colour over anyway with no problems whatsoever. But get plenty of glue in there to hold this tear. So it is quite a big tear, but make sure you've got plenty in there. Then we need to get some in underneath the actual area here. Once we've got some in there, we can then start to press all these sort of little areas down. We're going to obviously need to, we can speed this up with the hairdryer with it being water-based glue, and we're going to put tape over it as well to hold it in position. Get some glue on there. Take your tape, your pin out very carefully. Get some glue on the back of the leather, on here. Get some glue along the join line so that you can create that sort of almost like a filler gap all the way around the join line. You can use a contact adhesive if you wanted to, but obviously if you get it on the surface of the leather, it's going to be a bit more difficult to get that off, because obviously it's a solvent rather than a water base. So get your tape ready. The whole idea of the tape is to pull those two together. Probably not going to be able to shut them up completely because it's quite a biggish tear. If we just hold it together is the key to this. Then we can heat it up. Any areas where you've got gaps in your tear repair, you're going to be able to fill anyway, so that's no problem at all. By the time we've filled that, it's going to end up looking like a natural sort of scar line in the leather. So the next stage is to give that a dry. Try to get a little bit more tape on there to try to close that gap a little bit more. Put a little bit more fresh tape on there, really, on that one. Try to get when you're doing a tear repair, try to get the lines pulled, as close together as you possibly can, so that can be held in position, or that glue's, while the glue's drying, so it holds that nicely in position. And then dry that with a hairdryer. Certainly help set that off for a bit. So dealing with the actual scuff area that we've got on here, which we know is just here, we've got to obviously sand that down. So this particular paper that we're using, I think it's a 320, could be a little bit stronger than that, maybe a 220. Yeah, it's a 220 grit sandpaper, this one. It's quite a fine grain, but we just need to lightly sand these areas down where this very, very rough scuffing is. So we can do that while we're waiting for the glue to grab a hold. It'll probably take a good half an hour or so for the glue to take a hold. So the next sort of video that you'll be seeing is obviously is putting any fillers and things in that we need to put in just prior to painting. It certainly feels a lot better again there now, and it's got rid of all the roughness that was created with that really bad scrape that it had on there, and it's got rid of any of the sort of raised areas. And we're probably, once we get a little bit of paint on there, we might need to put like a tiny bit of filler in there, potentially. You can just sort of see, potentially there on the camera, you can just sort of see the sort of scrapes where it's come through, but that feels quite nice and smooth, to be fair. So I mean, there's a tiny little bit just there that we need to sort of maybe sand at the top end. But apart from that, it actually does feel quite good now. And we might get away with putting any fillers in there, so it will look like a natural sort of scar in the leather, which is better than obviously making it look fake. So obviously the more filler you put in, the more fake you're going to make your leather look, so the less filler the better, really. That's actually alright. So you can give the glue area another dry again. And then hopefully in about half an hour or so this will be ready to take the tape off and we can start filling. So that is how you would fix a tear on this classic car seat. So that's obviously this is the seats for Practical Classics. It's the Riley Pathfinder. As always guys, head on over to the channel, give both LRC and Practical Classics a subscribe on their YouTube channel. Please subscribe to Practical Classics magazine. The guys there do an absolutely amazing, wonderful job in the classic car industry. And it'd be just great to support them, and I can't wait to see this seat in a car being used, and that's the Riley Pathfinder for Practical Classics.